Hey guys, wait. The issue that should be on everyone's mind, which is the main topic, it's on the news, which is on top of everything else, but it is the topic, which is income inequality. That people want the minimum wage raised. You guys just did. I mean, you guys who run it, like I was sort of looking into wanting just like what would we want to continue with we made a video yesterday like how what is the situation with people for whom unemployment ended, like keep that we should be making continuing to be aware of what's taking place. But I was looking at something to be like, let's see what we could bring that's like to be of service but in another way, but on the same topic. And the thing is, like, you guys, I mean, this is where I'm not that this makes sense. Like, I got a pain signal, but it was like, well, like you're trying to tell me something about what I was looking at, but it's sort of I I felt like rushing it over. So, well, can you give me a minute to just there's a urgency to what you did, but then again, you know what? Like you know better than I. Right, what it is this. So we know what kind of people, like who's a like if you want to understand what the opposition is to like a living wage in this country, or the type of thought process, like what kind of intellectual culture or political culture exists that like wants to take people's food stamps away. Like what is it, right? If you because people don't, like someone said, I don't know, one of the parties, like the brand is that they're callous towards people. Doesn't make any sense. We want to understand what's been taking place, has always taken place in our like intellectual culture in this country. But this is what you must have signaled me about. It's about Barbara Ehrenreich's book, Nickel and Dimed. But here's the thing. It's what happens. The book shouldn't use. There are many books written on the working poor. There's many books written on it. Like like there is an entire segment in our society who works full time and is desperately poor. That is to say, the job. It doesn't matter that they work full time. They're absolutely desperately poor, despite working. That's a major part of who lives in our country and tells us that there's something wrong with wages. There's something wrong with a lot of things, but that should be alarming. Someone works the full time, same as you, but they actually may have to eat at a soup kitchen, or that's a problem. But a lot of people have written about it. But what's interesting is one of the main books that came out that was written by someone said sort of was a recent book that's very sort of a serious book on the topic, was written by someone, Barbara Ehrenreich. What I was looking at when you sort of signaled me about the pain, I mean, right, I mean, was hoping to add, would like people to be aware of what happened when the book, I mean, it's simply a book about the working poor, and what she had done was an interesting way of looking at it. What was in all the newspapers that reviewed the book, that is like the kind of reviews it got. There's some quotations. Right. This is what happened. She is this one. What she did was interesting. Like they said, well, what she wanted to do was to go and like work a bunch of different jobs. She's a writer, but and was a journalist. I think she was working at Harper's at the time. Wanted to do something like let me try to do this, like just a different way of looking into it, like a sort of scientist, like go take different kinds of jobs that are like in that sector, take and made kind of rules for herself about how to do it. That is like, so she worked as a waitress in a diner. She worked somewhere else. She worked somewhere else to like look to like that would be the way to write a book about it, instead of another way, like looking at a study. What's interesting, and it's made for a very interesting, look a way of seeing the working poor from the eyes of someone doing that. But like, that's the point. Okay, there's even a show on TV now, not the same type of thing, but where like I think like Morgan Spurlock goes and works different jobs. Like that's okay. What's interesting is it was such a well done book. It's on a lot of shelves in like cultural studies in the bookstore. It was reviewed in all the major book review sections of the paper and stuff. There was a lot. It was a good book on the subject, so naturally it's gonna get written. She did something interesting, right? When you signaled me, right, these are the kind of things that if you actually look at what was the criticized, huge amount of criticism came down on her book. It's an interesting way to do a thing. Like, why? What kind of negative attacks did the book get. I mean, gee, it's a very good writer doing an interesting thing. So look at what's happening with the working poor. What would be, what was why there was there an incredible like hostility towards the book in book review sections, like articles, op-eds about the book being bad? What would it be? What would be what would come to mind? Was it? And there was some quotations, and that's when you signal me, and that's just it. Good, we must be on the same page. Listen to the kind of things that were said when the book was reviewed by people like who had a problem with it. These are the kind of things when someone does something interesting like that to look at what's going on with the working poor. But I mean, you put pain in my life. That's why I'm like coming over before I'd like sort of formulated what to say. But you know better than I, who run this. Right. It's the negative, so incredible amount of negative reviews, but this is the language that was used in them. But this tells you when someone does something like that. It's what came. It's from the book, the way it was negatively treated by our like sort of media, the media that writes on new books. Right. Oh, right. Sorry. You guys sort of caught me off guard, but you're right though. I mean, this is what's to notice, right? Okay, right. Reviews. These are all the major papers that have book review sections with people who are very smart because they like work in our newspapers. The kind of people, really intelligent people. When they attack, how do they attack such a book? What that woman did. Interesting way to write a book about the working poor. This is what some of the quotations are, how it was attacked. And it did receive all kinds of negative reviews, right, at the time. Right. Someone called it a classic Marxist rant. Someone else called it intellectual pornography with no redeeming characteristics. She's criticized for this is some kind of Marxist pornography. Is how that's the way in which the people who are newspapers and book reviewers who are quite intelligent and know how to attack something when they don't like it. What don't they like? It's Marxist pornography, what she did. They're saying to do such a thing, that's the way it was criticized. This is some kind of sick Marxist woman who's done something that's an act of literary pornography. What she did is she went and worked different jobs that are in the sector you'd call working poor. It's an interesting thing to do for someone who's in the privileged sectors and writes Harper's. Be a waitress in a diner, and write about it from that perspective. Viciously attacked it. This is something that would be done by a sort of a crazed Marxist journalist who's on wants to make a rant and is doing Marxist pornography. That's how it was received by the mainstream book reviewers who didn't like it, and it got mainly bad reviews. But at the time that it came out, okay, that's the kind of thing that's going on in the privileged sectors among people who write book reviews, write op-eds. That's how they treated it. Okay, that tells you that what kind of sickness is involved in why not everyone in the political class is on the same. Why don't we just raise the minimum wage? What's the problem? What's the problem? They want to take away people's food stamps. By what is this? The whole political party rides on things like that. What would create that? It's intellectuals. The intellectual culture is that anyone who cares about the fact that you don't know how it's possible to live on the minimum wage for anyone, that you are some kind of Marxist agitator, or that you're a left-wing, something or other, which is no better than calling people right-wing nuts who bring up a issue about whatever. I mean, there's but there is a major element of mainstream intellectual culture among all the privileged sectors in the society, the political class, that is so hostile to anyone who would point out how are people getting by. There's tent cities that would react to that person as a far left-wing communist for pointing such a thing out. This is the same as the claim that persons people also get called right-wing nuts for writing about certain things. This is what goes on. But the way the book was reviewed in the mainstream, it tells you the kind of sickness in the privileged sectors of our society that are causing why it's a controversial to raise the minimum wage to something people could live on.